and members of the audience. So we'll stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. First item on the agenda is the discussion about the Times Square clock. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion around town about the future, the fate of the clock down there. But we're going to talk about it today. So who wants to start the discussion here? Roger, do you have any comments to lead us out here on this, or? Morning.
Issue initiated originally from the fact that the clock was not working. And we were trying, because of its age, to try to find a replacement part, and basically have to replace the entire workings of the entire clock, but just replace a broken part. And through a lot of research or whatever, we were finally able to find just the replacement part, but the clock was in disrepair or not working for, I don't know, a month plus. All that was going on. So I think the original thought was, by some people, at least in some of the emails that I saw, was to community support to try to, get the clock back up and running. And if necessary, if it was a cost concern, some of the community members had indicated a desire to try to support a fundraising effort to accomplish that. So then the clock started running again. Now it's morphed into the issue that the existing standalone clock that we currently have is not included in the new plan for Times Square. A different clock is included, but not that existing freestanding clock. The conversation was morphed from one to the other. New look and feel that we're wild fusion. So they, do we probably next time.
Roger, is your mic on? Is it somebody text me and said they couldn't hear anything you were saying?
Okay, I'm gonna switch it out. Maybe that's... So just to reiterate briefly, clock was broken. People thought that it was a matter of trying to raise the money to get it repaired. We were able to find a replacement part, so we didn't have to replace the entire innards. Clock started working again. Then it became the issue that in the new sort of more modernistic design of Times Square that we're currently working on, there wasn't really a fit of that style of clock there. But you could have a fusion. So there are some people who like to mix styles. The other alternative is to a plan for a freestanding clock, but not necessarily put it in on day one of the new plan and see how it looks and feels. And then if people feel like, oh my God, we're missing this, we're still missing the clock, we will have a different clock, come back and put it in. So those are sort of the range of options that I see. The current clock, current design, and build around it. And upgrade the inners because it will need that, we're on borrowed time in terms of keeping the current clock running. With a new freestanding clock of some type. Or not go with the clock design that we had in the concept plan. And then if there's still an overwhelming need for a clock to come back in and put it in, because we could pre-plan for it by putting in a thickened slab and conduit, should community desire 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years, 100 years in the future, they want the clock back or a clock back. So that's sort of the range of how we got here, at least as far as I know, how we got here, and what potential alternatives the council can discuss today.
I never dreamed in my wildest imagination that we'd be sitting here talking about this clock for forever, but here we are. And well, I guess a couple of questions I have before I open it up to everybody. I'm sorry for butting in here. What are the estimates for this clock as far as repairing it or replacing it, or do we have any ideas about that?
I don't have that number right now, but I can get it for you.
I think that would make a difference in people's judgment.
If you excuse me for a second, I'll seek it.
And the other thing is, obviously we've been getting all kinds of emails about this. People are nostalgic about the clock, and of course a lot of the people that we're hearing from, some are people from the island, but most that I see are tourists and vacationers that come down year after year, and they've become accustomed to taking pictures at the clock and so forth. It's sort of how they measure time in more ways than one, I guess. But, anyhow, the question is, whether we want to keep this clock. I mean, and I don't think it's going to boil down to the cost of it. It's either going to be a repair or replacement. I'm sure we can do either one. And so it's a matter of whether we want to keep the old clock and find a place for it in this new plan, or scrap it completely and just go with the new design. I happen to think that we could probably find a place for it and keep the clock in there, and that way I think everybody will be happy. It's funny, public opinion, usually the only people you hear from are the advocates of one certain cause. You don't hear from the silent majority of people who really don't care one way or the other, to be honest with you. That's the impression that I'm getting. Anyhow, those are my comments, and then I'll be happy to listen to what you all say. Jim?
Mr. Mayor, I asked to put this on the agenda today, and I appreciate my colleagues going along with that at our last meeting. And here's my thought on both the clock and the arches. And I know they're different issues and they mean different things to different people, but I've talked about this before, but this island is going through what I call a renaissance. We have major change going on, all of which I support. The Estero Boulevard renovation is major, and I think a tremendous, even though it's been difficult, a tremendous improvement for the island. Got Margaritaville going in. We've got Bayside Park, Times Square, Bay Oaks, got a new bridge on the south end. We've got potential new restructuring of the traffic coming off the north end of the bridge. These are all tremendous, I think, developments for our town, and I support them 100%. There is an element and a contingency on the island that, and it differs. Again, the arches and the clock are different items, and different people have rallied for each of them. But it seems to me, in the interest of comity amongst our citizenry and being collegial, being respectful of all, trying to bring everyone along on this change, it seems like an easy thing to do for the council to be sensitive to the folks who want to preserve the clock in its existing location. I've received no correspondence in support of the new sale, and there was no ill intent putting that new design in. People were trying to modernize and change the Times Square and improve things. There was no ill intent there. But clearly, many folks have reached out on the clock. You're right, Mr. Mayor. Some live off the island and are tourists, but we should certainly be sensitive to them. But many folks on the island, including our former mayor, rallied for the clock and preserving the existing clock. And on the arches, it seems like we've got three new members of the town council, and got a very earnest group of folks trying to preserve the arches in one way or another. And I'm just trying to be sensitive to their ask, so we can, as this island changes, and again, I would argue in a very positive way, we try to bring everyone along with us, at least, and we'll never bring everyone. There'll always be dissent, and that's okay. But we ought to make an attempt to try to bring everyone along with us. So I strongly support preserving the existing clock. Whether it needs to be replaced eventually, we would replace it with a light clock. Really try to salvage the existing clock if that's possible. And then I support trying to find a creative solution to the arches. I don't know what the answer is. I'll offer a couple of suggestions. But I just think as this island changes, again, in a wonderfully positive way, we ought to try to bring everybody along with us that we can. And these two asks, to me, seem very reasonable. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I kind of concur with what Councilman Atterholt said, but I also kind of think there's three different schools of thought. One is to keep the clock as it is. The other is to upgrade the clock with something else, and the other is to remove it. Similar to what Councilman Atterholt said, I didn't get any love. And it was a pretty significant difference. I think everybody wanted some kind of clock. And I think that, reading through this, and also going through and researching what kind of clocks were out there. And our clock is a simple version of what's in many towns. I've seen them in anywhere from parking strips to in Times Squares, although usually in Times Squares they're quite a bit grander, very European in its feel. But I think that if we're going to replace the clock, we can do better than what we have now. I know the clock, and people who've been here a while seem to have a great deal of affection for it. But I think, we're putting a huge facelift on Times Square, and to build around a clock that, as a couple of residents said, was a off the shelf kind of clock. It wasn't something that was custom made for the island. I think there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of things we can do that will be more fitting to the upgrades of Times Square and to the community itself.
There's a clock and different style clock. Ms. Mayor.
Agree with Bill.
I will. I agree with what everybody said so far. I've had a lot of correspondence with people that very much wanted to keep the clock. And as Councilman Atterholt said, we are, embarking on quite a few changes that are going to make the island feel and look a little bit different than maybe it did 20 years ago. Perhaps preserving something as small as this clock, I think it's a pretty good idea. I've always enjoyed keeping something old when you put something new. It just remembers, how you got there. My question to staff and maybe Roger would be, we decided to keep it in the spot that it was, because I know there's been some people that have said they'd like to keep it exactly where it is. Some are okay if it gets moved as long as it stays. Do you see any issue with keeping it where it's at, holding up or affecting any of the new design? There'd be time, money, and if so, what do you think it would be?
Yeah, I wouldn't say, Counselor, I wouldn't say.
Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me, sir. This isn't a regular meeting where we have interjections. So you're going to have to keep that to yourself for right now. I'll be happy to listen to you when we break. Thank you. Continue, Dan. Roger?
I wouldn't say exactly maybe in the exact spot, but I would say in the immediate area, we could probably put it in there. I just don't want to be beholden to the exact spot, but I would say, would take 5 feet either, in any direction, yes. To answer your question, Mr. Mayor, the clock that's currently there is from 2001. And I think most of you are familiar enough with ocean salt environments that something mechanical that's 20 years old pretty much has achieved its service life. And so now we can buy if the decision is to go with the clock, we just replace it with the most updated version of the same model per se. If that's council's decision. Depending upon the casement, the upside price would be 50,000. If we went with a cheaper encasement, it could be
50,000, that's what I heard you say? 50,000?
50.
Okay.
Okay, and just to put that in perspective, the project itself is $2.5 million. Just to put it in perspective.
And if I might, Roger, what's the cost estimate for the proposed clock / sale?
Well, the sale is not the clock in the new proposal. The clock in the new proposal, as currently shared with you by the consultant, was an LED style clock and sort of a variable message sign, and one of the repeating messages would be updating the time. Could have the tides, could have happy holidays, it could have other things on that message. So that's more like a variable. It's like a narrow variable message board, if you could think of it from that perspective.
You have a rough estimate as to what the cost of that would be?
I do not, but I could try to get that for you.
Be helpful just that you posited the number for the old to replace the old clock. It'd be good to know what we would be spending if we did with the proposed design.
Yeah, I would suggest that that I actually personally like the variable message capability of that, notwithstanding the fact that one of those messages would be the time. So I don't know if I would necessarily you have to trade one for the other, but if you wanted to, you could. I'll find out the price.
I think it'd be nice, I mean, just by talking about this clock doesn't necessarily mean we have to remove the other clock. I found it interesting, how many kids of this generation don't know how to read the old clocks. Part of what we're doing is for future generations, and not that them being able to read the clock or not read the clock, but I found it very interesting that I had someone that was 18 years old come up to me and say they didn't know how to read the old style clock. And it kind of took me back that then I thought about my daughter, they aren't teaching cursive in school anymore. So, times are changing. And I don't think that we need to necessarily have to, whether the clock stays or goes, that we have to worry about the messaging board staying or going. I think you could have both.
I agree. You could have both and still keep everybody happy. I think that that clock, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was a little past one. Anyhow, it was during the reconstruction of Times Square, when we closed Times Square off all those years ago. The clock itself, of course, the color scheme and everything else fit in with the existing scheme that's down there, and it has been continued all these years, which I presume would still continue with our new logo if we stick with the branding aspect of it, the color issue. But I agree with Councilman Allers that you could have both. There's really no reason why we couldn't have both down there. Then if any question about what time it is at all, they And we can
Everybody
have field
knows that.
trips with the kids down there and teach them how to read the old clocks, and we can have all sorts of projects. And in fact, Dan, I think we'll put you in charge of that. And,
Absolutely, I'd love to.
I do think, Mr. Mayor, if I may interject, that, I agree with what Councilman Aller is saying, that, having an analog clock there, though, kind of is befitting for the Times Square. I really like the variable message board because it can have things that are maybe more pertinent to people who are down here, like tides, a countdown to sunset, all kinds of things that would be more fitting, but I don't like it necessarily being the only thing that tells the time. The other thing is, if we come up with the monument down there that we're custom doing, then it seems like we could also integrate logo into it. And so one of the things that was said to be an advantage that we're looking at any kind of redo is have some spot where there could be a selfie spot. And that would make that monument serve that same purpose. Or the other thing is instead of, since right now there's nothing permanent, that's why the clock is such an attraction. We're going to have the stage. And the stage is going to be probably more overt, more of a gathering spot than a clock would be. So we can maybe even look at integrating, if we're going to have some kind of tower clock, integrating it into the stage itself somehow.
too. Okay, well, what I'm hearing is the consensus is that we want to keep the old analog clock in some capacity and join it with the new clock messaging board, et cetera. And somewhere along the line, when we get into the next stage of our planning sessions with Times Square, we'll be able to get another picture of that and maybe some different proposals about the clock, or maybe Councilman Veach's idea of integrating it with the bandstand or whatever. But we'll have other options. But if I'm not mistaken, the consensus today is to keep the sign or keep the clock, and we'll do that and let it be known throughout the town that the clock is going to stay. Okay. Sure. I respect your wanting to ask a question, but we don't answer. We don't have question and answers during these management and planning sessions. I'll be happy to talk to you when we break here. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. That's out of order.
May I say something, please, Mr. Mayor?
No, sir. No, sir. Please, please, relax. I promise I'll get to you when we break. This isn't the forum.
Please, Mr. Mayor.
No,
I
sir.
remind everybody in the room that you opened the meeting by saying we're going to have the public discussion. Here that wants to. Giving any of us a chance.
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. Sir, you're out of order. You're going to be removed now. Please, I don't want to have to do that. There's no public discussion in the management and planning meetings. We have the public discussion during our regular council meetings. This is a management and planning session, sir. Please, please abide by that, and I'd be happy to speak with you as soon as we break here. Now, we'll move on to the next item. We have consensus on the Times Square clock.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
the current estimate for the sales, which was the question that was asked, is, according to the consultant, is $100,000. To answer that question, that's the current
Cost for the sales or the
sales. When asked the question, what was the cost for the sales?
And Roger, just to be clear, and just help my memory here, wasn't the digital display, wasn't that underneath the main sale in Times Square, or was that a completely separate? I thought you had the big sale right where the clock was, and then there was a digital thing around it. Am I not remembering that
It was
correctly?
on that pole, but it could be on a different pole. But
It was on that
It was currently, if your memory is, my memory of your memory is correct.
So without oversimplifying this, we could actually save $50,000 by preserving the clock.
If you eliminate the sales and add back in the new clock, theoretically, you would save $50,000.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item. That's the Fort Myers Beach arches. This is the discussion of the arches as requested by town council. Again, Roger, I'll let you start off with this and
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, representatives of the group that have to try to find a home for the archers that used to be at the northern entrance of the island, have come to the town council and spoken, at least two, possibly more times, with regard to trying to find a site for the arches, going forward. And, the, last council meeting under council member items, Councilor Atterholt, said that he wanted to have a discussion, and that was supported by other members of council, so it's on the agenda for you to discuss today. As you know, the Arches folks have worked with Lee County to, for locations, and what has been told to me by Lee County that they have adjusted locations. In some cases, those locations required a scaled down model. And for whatever reason, that wasn't embraced by the Arches support group. So, I would caution you not to get into competition with them, but feel free to discuss the item. As I think you all are aware, it's not currently contemplated in any of our capital improvement plans as we begin this discussion.
Mayor has stepped out of the room. Jim, I believe you were the person who requested this on the agenda. Do you want to speak?
I'll start. It's a similar preamble that I said before with respect to all the, I think, wonderful change occurring on the island. When I first ran for office, I was contacted by the Save the Arches group, and I expressed sympathy to them. And since then, we have 3 new members of the council. We, in an effort again to bring everyone along as the island changes, I don't claim to have the answer. I suggested at the last meeting that possibly an opportunity might be at Bay Oaks. There's a half-mile walking path, which is a beautiful idea that the Borcab folks came up with. And that walking path goes close to the historic cottages. And I thought maybe if we could, real life, if you look behind me, you can see the arch, maybe just part of the arches, that one major arch here with a plaque attached to it that would picture the whole arch and give the history of the arches. And then people could walk through it as they go through the pedestrian walking path. Unfortunately, that idea was not embraced by Borcab, which is fine. I have great respect for them and their history and wisdom on the island. But I was just really putting that up as a trial balloon, trying to find some kind of a compromise where we could, again, try to bring everybody along on this renaissance that the island is experiencing. I have another suggestion. The southernmost beach access to Lynn Hall Park might be a nice place for the arches as well. There's currently room. The color of the arches matches nicely with the sand and the beach. Everyone could pass through there, have that photo op, that opportunity to reminisce. I don't claim to have the answer. I just think out of respect to our citizenry that is really trying to preserve the arches, we ought to be looking for ways to memorialize the arches. They literally are right behind us every time we meet here. They clearly have historical significance. I know there's debate about whether it should be on the island, San Carlos. I know there's a lot of, and all that debate is legitimate. I don't claim to have the answer. I just, as one member of the council, am willing to hear and take a look at additional or other solutions. And I'm wide open to the idea of finding some way to preserve the arches in some capacity.
Yeah, similar to what Councilman Atterholt had said, that, I've spoken to several of the people that are pursuing to save the arches, and it seems that there's, whether it be from the county level or our level, that can never be a consensus on where they should go. As you said, Borcab has been very adamant about they don't want it there. They believe that it should, if it doesn't, some believe that if it doesn't go back to where it originally was, that it shouldn't be resurrected at all. I don't know that I agree with that. I agree that there's potentially some place that it could go. So far, I haven't really seen any suggestions that make sense. Perhaps maybe at the base of the bridge in the new roundabout area or something. I don't know. Maybe there's a place that we could put it to keep that alive. But as I said before, I'm all about keeping history as you move forward, involved in some of the designs. I just say I haven't seen anything that really strikes me as a good landing spot for them yet. But I'm definitely open to any suggestions somebody may have that I haven't thought of.
Yeah, I think we have I understand the strong desire for a certain group of people to try to restore this bit of history. Seem like we're coming up with a pattern where everywhere that they propose to put them, there's some entity or some group that has an interest in that area that doesn't want them. This was with Bayfront Park was proposed, and the people around Bayfront Park want to keep it open. At Bay Oaks, we heard from the Bay Oaks people, and there aren't that many places really that the town has control of that could handle something of this size. I'm also a bit concerned they don't have that much of the arch of some big sections, but a lot of the small sections have been used somewhere else. If it can, if it can find a home, I think I understand what our manager's saying, is that a lot of the places to put this, like even what Councilman Adler's was saying, is in county, under county control. And we don't necessarily want to compete with the county where they can put this, because they tend to have more visible, bigger areas than the town does.
Well, it's actually good Bill spoke next, because I kind of segue off of that. One of the things that Bill did not mention that was a prior suggestion for the arches was Crescent Beach Park. County was willing to put them there and willing to pay to put them there. And a former council voted down that idea. I was the sole vote that said, let's put them there. This would have been solved a long time ago. I'm still of the opinion that that's a good place for them. And like you say, the county has a lot more places to put them than we do. The pieces of land that we own on this island, except for Bay Oaks, are small. I don't want to see a miniature version of the arches. I understand it may have to be scaled down, but if you make it so small that it would fit in the small pieces of property we own, it doesn't make any sense. So I'm still supporting putting them in Crescent Beach Park. And if another option comes up, I'm happy to support that under most scenarios. Okay, turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you. You solved it yet?
Well, let me before the mayor
The
goes.
general consensus was we want to put them somewhere, but
Mr. Mayor, just because you had to step out, I appreciate that. I had suggested just as a trial balloon, which turned out to be a lead balloon for Bay Oaks. But I had also suggested, and I have to credit my wife with this, there is, and I appreciate what Councilor Hosafros is saying with Crescent Park, but I do think there's an option as well with Lynn Hall Park, is that southern beach access coming off beach. If we could resurrect, hopefully in scale, this part of the arch where you could walk underneath the arch coming off the beach. The color of these arches meshes well with the beach. Lots of room there. And I understand that Lynn Hall is controlled by the county, but my sense is county wants to work in concert with the town and not work in opposition to the town. And if we could all agree on a location, then the county might come along with us. I can't guarantee that, but that's just based upon what I've heard. So that was the discussion while you were gone. And I think both, I don't want to speak for Councilor Allers or Veach, but I think they're open to a clever solution, but we're not sure we have one yet.
I will tell you that my discussions with the county commissioners, individual county commissioners, is they want to wash their hands of this. I mean, and no offense to the arch people, but they've been bombarded with these options, and they're really looking to us. They're looking to us. So if we come back with a unified consensus position about what we want to do and where we want to put them, I think we can convince them to come along with us, as long as it's not overbearing. And I like your idea, Jim. I like the idea of that location. But, there's no perfect place, and I know the Arch people have worked hard on this for a long time, and they're anxious to get something done. I'm interested in knowing how much of those original arches are actually left, and I'm sure one of the members will probably tell me that when the meeting ends. But anyhow, if that's the consensus of the council, is to bring a location that we can vote by the county commissioners, then assuming that it's on county property, and let's do that. Let's do it and get this
If I
this
could,
behind us.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Since I was in favor of putting them at Crescent Beach, I have no objection to putting them at Lynn Hall. So I think part of the reason the commissioners are being kind of hands-off is that they had a plan, they were willing to finance it, and we stood in their way. So I'm willing to say that we could send a letter to the commissioners saying, we're all on board with Lynn Hall. So I'm agreeing with Mr. Atterholt on that.
Appreciate that. And in fairness to the Arches folks, as well as the town and the county, I wonder if in the interim, particularly since the format today doesn't lend itself to public input, I wonder if we could instruct the town manager to meet with the folks from the Arches group, and then also have your staff, Roger, go out and explore that location, southernmost beach access point to Lynn Hall, and just make sure it's okay with the Save the Arches folks. I'm okay with the Crescent Park concept as well. I think in order to get unanimity on the council, the Lynn Hall option might be better. And I think the county wants unanimity from the town. I think the mayor is absolutely correct. Wants a unified front from the town before they proceed. I want to make sure that the Lynn Hall location makes sense to the Save Our Arches folks. It also makes sense structurally, and there's a location to actually, it makes sense to find a place there. And then we work with the county to see if that's an option as well. So I appreciate that. Yep.
Jim, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you about having the town manager meet with the Save the Arches folks. My experience with this group is that their leader is not even here, and that they are disjointed in their structure, and meeting with them is not necessarily fruitful. That's part of the reason that we have problems with this project. They all have good intentions, but they're not really structured.
Maybe
So-
we could invite some of the folks from who are passionate about the Arches to speak during the public comment period on Monday, so we can get a better sense as to whether that would be a viable option for them. And that way, anyone who wants to speak, who's a supporter of the Arches, speak, and we could get a better sense in that format.
Sure, that might be the way to go.
Okay, that's fine.
Mr. Mayor, one second, Roger. Just let me. I'm trying to get a visual. Are you speaking about where the boardwalk goes over at the end of that?
It's a little further down, a
Little
little
further
further
north?
north.
Little
Yeah,
further north.
it's the last beach access point coming off, leading to Lynn Hall Park.
Leading to a little further up north of
There's
that.
quite a
Okay.
bit of room. It's a pretty,
And it wouldn't be view blocking from people in the square and so forth
right,
and so on.
it wouldn't
Yeah.
impact the Times Square development.
I got you.
And I think it would be potentially a nice compromise. Again,
Got you.
I don't take credit for it. My bride and I were walking through there the other day, and she suggested, hey, this might be a great location. So I don't even know if this has been explored. I'm just, again, trying to figure out a way to, as we change, as the island changes, and I'm really thankful today for the council's action on the clock, as many folks we can bring along with us, I think it's gonna make the change on the island not only easier, but also, I think, better and more unifying.
Very good. Sorry, Roger.
No need for an apology. I just wanted to be sure the council was aware that my understanding of the disconnect as pertains to the Crescent Beach Park location was that the county offered the sort of the side, along the side property line. And what I understood the council's position and other people's position was they didn't want it across the Estero face of the park. And for some reason, I don't know if it was a scaling issue or some other issue that for some reason, that option fell apart, that discussion fell apart down the side property line. So, to be clear, I don't know that the county, or that was their last offer on the table. I don't know that that really, that couldn't be easily resurrected, if you will. And I will tell you that I think there is a hesitancy on the county's part to sort of have it on the faces of the property, sort of the Cerro Boulevard portion, versus down the side property lines, if you will. But clearly, that is the ultimate decision of the council. We could communicate that to the county through a letter to the county manager and the commissioners to say that, if you were to go forward with this, this is our location A, location B type of thing. I think it's good to give them more than one so that, they could kind of wrestle with both of them and look at the pros and cons of both, or even three if we could come up with a third. And then one of the things that sort of is whispered but never really talked aloud about is that, who's paying for what? So as we become more active in the discussion, there may be a reach out to us in some point. Well, if that's where you want it, are you willing, say, to divide it by thirds? We'll pay a third, town pays a third, and folks raise a third. I don't know how that financial element will come to play once feasible location is identified.
Well, I'm sorry, Jim. I have a feeling that they'd be a little more receptive to this location than the, something that's viewed from the boulevard. Really wouldn't see it from the boulevard, it's kind of up there and it's sort of on its own up there, if I'm imagining it right. And, if it's not too, too large and overbearing and so forth, I don't, if it's a smaller replica of what was and so forth, I mean, I don't see why they would be too objectionable to that. I think maybe before all the letters and everything, that maybe we have our District Commissioner Sandelli come out, and he's been very active in these discussions, just a general feel about it. And if Chairman Ruane wants to come down, he's more than welcome to as well. I don't know that the other guys are all that interested in it, but anyhow, I think Ray Sandelli would probably be very happy to come down and take a look. So
I would just interject for a second.
I was just going to add just real quickly, even though I'm open to the Crescent Park idea, I think the fact that the previous council voted that down creates an aura of controversy around that. The goal here is to try to bring everybody together. If we can make the Lynn Hall Park solution work, and there's little resistance to it, I just think it'd be, as we're trying, this is an opportunity to bring people together. Crescent Park has some history and some controversy. This is a new location. I just think it might be nice to make a fresh start and try to bring everybody together. But I'm sorry, Councilor Veach, go ahead.
One thing that's come out as being a common thread with this is that, and it's not just with the arch, it's with every construction we see, every big block house is going up in Estero. People complain about the loss of the open views. And that has been, I think, a prevailing complaint about the arch is that they'll block a view. And I think that one of the reasons why the county probably didn't want them along the boulevard, because that was a view towards the beach, and that's the premier view we have on the island. I think putting anything that's going to run along the beach is probably going to have the same kind of negative effect from people that are in the area. I would, and particularly if it's right along the beach. I understand what you're saying, where you're going to put it, but I look at this and I see, well, this is really for cars. So the entrance to Lynn Hall Park, where they have an entrance and they have an exit, would fit a version of this. I think that you'll probably find that people on the other side of Estero are gonna complain because they're losing their view.
I appreciate what you're saying. This would be on the other, as you come off the beach through the vegetation. That's where I'm talking about. So it wouldn't obstruct the view of the beach in any capacity. And then people would walk through it on their way back to the parking lot and through the park or 2 Times Square, but it wouldn't obstruct anyone's view of the beach, because I agree with you. Don't want to obstruct any view. So no view would be obstructed because the vegetation already obstructs it. And it would be, you walk up the beach, through the pass of the vegetation, and then have an opportunity for the arch.
This is quite a bit higher than the vegetation though, isn't it?
I don't know that it would be. We'll have to go back and take a look at it, but your point's well taken.
Not a miniature model of it.
I know this, yeah.
But I think that, and the other thing is that there seems to be a lot of competing, like you said, opinions on this. And I guess one sign of a proper compromise is if no one's happy,
That's fair.
no one's satisfied, I should say.
That's fair.
Your wife is ready to run, Jim. Tell her I'll help her out in her campaign. No
And
problem
I'll second
there.
the motion.
Any further comments?
I guess I'd like to make it clear what our consensus was. Is our consensus that we're going to allow public comment about this on Monday and then take some kind of vote? Communicate with the county commissioners? Jim, is that your understanding of our consensus?
I think that's a fair course, and in the interim, I would encourage you folks that are down in that area to take a look at that spot, and, because again, there may be a better spot at Lynn Hall Park, but that just seemed like a natural spot, but some of you folks have a lot more history than I do down here, so I'm just looking for a solution. I'm not saying it's the answer, but it may be one that at least bring the majority of folks together around.
The consensus that, excuse me, Roger, the consensus that I think we've arrived at here today is that we're going to find a location for the arches. We're going to try to find a location for the arches. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that pretty much what I'm hearing? And so at least we're at that point, so there's no question that the arch folks know that we're trying to find a location for the remnants of the arches. So anyhow, and we'll explore this possibility. And if any other ones come along during this process, we'll take a look at that too. But that's the direction we're heading in. I'm sorry, Roger, go ahead.
No, sir, no need to apologize. I just wanted to be clear. I don't know that in the prior versions of the counties trying to work on this, that they haven't reviewed that location and found some flaw with it. So I just want to be careful that,
I don't know either, yeah.
right, so I don't want to sort of say that we say that's the location and that we sort of, so I think we want to be careful to say we want them to explore, if they haven't already, to explore that as a possible location.
That's fair.
If it's feasible. And I think what the conversation really needs to be with the arches people is if before we have the county do that, if that location is not going to make them happy, for whatever reason, then why go through that effort, just to be back at loggerheads with them? So I think we need to be careful that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we recommend site A, B, and C, and they say we don't like any of them. So, that puts us in a spot. So let's be sure that before we go asking third party, the county, whether it's okay with them or they would look at that location, let's use the mechanism of public comment or whatever to see that, well, if that were accepted by the county, that would be fine with us. There's someone get caught in trying to have 3 people pick a restaurant. No one wants to go to the restaurant that the other person wants to go to.
That's fair. In the interim, I would encourage the supporters of the arches who maybe are here or watching, is that either if the group is unified around a particular position, come and share that with us on Monday during comment period. If you have a dissenting opinion, you're welcome to come as well and share that. And so we can get a little bit more input as we try to work to find a solution everybody can support.
And one other point is in conversations I've had with them, they were essentially promising to finance this construction, raise the money for it. So I think, Roger is saying is a three-way split is one thing, but I think that, this is the promise that they made in one of their pitches. So another approach to this would be to say, just logistically, not finding a spot, is that, okay, here's a spot for it, and then until they raise the money, it doesn't go up.
I think the county's offered to provide some help too in the past, so hopefully that offer's still outstanding. Yeah, your point's well taken.
So what we have accomplished here this morning is that we have we're sending a signal to Lee County Commission that there is direction from the town council that we're moving forward. They've been waiting for a signal from us, frankly, and today they've received it. So we're moving forward, and we're exploring more possibilities with the intention of one day resurrecting the Mars Beach arches. Okay, any final thoughts? Oh, we'll move on. Item C is the Bay Oaks redevelopment progress. These are matters regarding the redevelopment of Bay Oaks. Roger, you want to lead us out?
Mayor and members of the council, the Bay Oaks Advisory Committee has taken three firm positions. One of them is, you talked about earlier, which is that they didn't want to place the archers at Bay Oaks. The second is that they didn't like the latest concept plan that was presented by the consultant to you all. And third is that they would like a complete plan with all phases included, as they originally presented in terms of their recommendations for the total build out of Bay Oaks campus. And I think the potential disconnect is that project that they envision is in the $20 million range. And the amount of money we currently have available is less than that unless the council determines to create more to the project. And this, from the staff perspective, we'll build whatever the council directs us to build. Inside skating ring, we'll do that, or rock wall, or whatever. Point is that we're taking what we're hearing in the way of comments from the council to say that we're pretty much working on with a $5.5 million budget. So I think it would be important to get that clarified today if we could. So Council Allers is liaison to the committee. He may want to speak next about this, but right now, we really go a long way to try to get this issue clarified so that can move forward with a minimum amount of rework.
Okay, Dan, you want to speak?
Yeah, so I think it's important to, some of the new members like myself maybe don't have a full context of the background of how it started. 3 years ago, the discussion, 3.5 years ago, roughly, kind of just an open discussion between those of us that were on BORCAB at the time about how nice it would be to revitalize the area and how underutilized it is and the marketing and all of that. So that kind of started us down the road. I think we could all be in agreement that in 3 years, the fact that we're this close to discussing doing something there is much faster than I ever anticipated. I can't speak for everybody else, but personally, I could tell you it's much faster than I thought. Previous councils, and obviously this council, are in favor of doing something there. The issue that we're having now is committee was directed to think big, which they did. They came up with very great ideas, but we came down to a point where, as a council, we only give them so much money to spend. Correct me if I'm wrong, Roger. I think if we were to try to do the entire project the way that BORCAB would like to see it done, it would take raising the millage rate 1.5, 1.6 from where we are currently to be able to fund that. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, depending on how far out. Yeah, I mean, yes, that's the range. that's correct range could be as much as a 2 mils, depending upon how far out you go with that. You know, so obviously, construction prices tend to increase faster than typical inflation. So as you push things out, they will get more expensive.
It's so,
That's a good range.
okay.
A good low side of the range.
Okay. So I think what Allison and her team did is they took all the input from BORCAB, put it into a pot, and tried to figure out exactly what was the most important things to try to get done to fit within the budget that the staff was allowed to work within. I think they did a great job of listening, talking to members, and trying to figure out what were the most top 3, 4, 5 things that they're hearing that was needed. Passive, recreation, place for meetings, something that's separate, so it's not just a gym. Things that can be, moving forward, can be universal. It's not just pigeonholed to being a basketball court. It's not just pigeonholed to being whatever else. I think Allison and her team did a very good job and put a lot of work into coming back with a concept that tried to involve everything, the amphitheater, the baseball field, and tried to get it as close to the 5.5 million as possible. Now it's still over, so there's still tweaking that needs to be done. I think, I can't speak for you guys, but I would love to see the whole thing completely built. But I think what's missing in the discussion is the amount of use that it gets now and the revenue it's going to generate. Even at 5.5 million, I'm struggling seeing how we're going to build is, it's something much nicer than what we have, but it's not exactly what ORCAB has worked hard to put together that they would like to see. And I don't know, and I'll listen to your input, but I don't see how we're going to be able to bridge that gap without asking the community to spend a bunch of money for a spot that currently isn't being utilized. I just don't know if building something like that would be beneficial to the island as far as repaying, if I'm making sense. As Roger said, I think that we need to, it's important, when I was on the committee, it was my understanding that as a committee matter, our job was to take direction from council as to what we were to work on. Take that, we advise the council, and the council takes it from there and makes the decisions and moves forward. My fear is that the more we talk about this, the more it's going to end up being like the Estero lighting project. It's going to get stalled out. Nothing's going to happen. I really want to keep the ball moving. And if it's a majority of the council that we build the whole thing, then that's the majority of the council's vote. But last thing I want to see, and I believe some of the members of BORCAB are in agreement, that they don't want to stall it out, but they want to be involved a little bit more as to what is being designed. Maybe be not necessarily designing it completely, but work a little bit more with them to get closer to what they'd like to see within the budget that we've allowed staff to work with.
Something that kind of tags on to what Dan said. I'd like to remind everybody, and especially BORCAB, there's another advisory group, the Anchorage Advisory Group, who also planned a building. And all of those people worked very hard as well. And they are legitimate members of the community, just as the BORCAB members are. This council told them no. They then took off on a different path and tried to, come up with a way to do it. So I think that to do it in a different way, because the council told them no. They understood they were an advisory group and moved on from where they were. They were very disappointed. They really did believe that it was the best thing for the town to have mooring facilities there, but they moved on, understanding that the council didn't find that that was the place to put it after we took input from a lot of people. I think that's one thing to keep in mind, is perspective on all this, that there are other people in the community that have worked for things as well and have been disappointed as things have happened in addition. I guess another thing I'd like to tag on to that is that we use the word think big a lot. And thinking big is a brainstorming process. And I think some people on BORCAB got the idea that by telling them to think big, we were telling them they were going to get everything that they wanted. And it's a brainstorming process. You think big in order to get lots of ideas, and then down the road, some of them do get eliminated. So just another perspective needs to be taken when we look at. Those are just kind of preliminary thoughts without getting into.
Well, I went back over the last few days and watched the last 4 or 5 board cab meetings, and in hindsight being 2020, I think it would have been helpful if, and the town came up with its revised proposal, trying to work within the constraints of the budget, they would have consulted with board cab first and given them a heads up, taken their input, and worked with them. And quite honestly, the council probably should have said to the town manager, hey, let's bring board cab in here before we digest this new plan. That wasn't done. And quite honestly, I think we owe board cab an apology for that because they put a lot of time and effort into all this. Having said that, it seems like going forward, none of this is irreparable. We can work this out and we can come together. I'd love to see a joint session between board cab and the town council. And I'd love to have the town manager and the design firm there. I'd like to, we had when the original grand master plan was presented, the town council did had a great meeting. We trimmed a few things. We took out the welcome center. We debated whether we needed artificial turf in order to try to find some economies there. I think board cab understands that we need to tweak a few things. But I think what was lost in this transition between to this more project that was within the budget, that this new plan the town came up with, I think some of the vision of board cab was lost. And I think if there's a way to bring board cab in, implement some of their ideas and visions in ways that work within the budget constraints. Now, in fairness to board cab, this new proposal is also 2-phased. The second phase involves building a new gymnasium 4, 5, 6 years down the road. So that's phase 2. So if there's a way we could take board cab's original vision and adopt some of the economies that the council's already put forth, again, eliminating the welcome center, the artificial turf, et cetera, employ some of the new ideas that that the town has put forth to help economize this thing. Just bring everybody together again. See, if we're not all together on this, it's really going to be tough to marshal broad support for it. So again, I would argue that it would be helpful to have a joint meeting with the design team. And if we have to phase it, clearly one of the things I heard in all these board cab meetings was that the amphitheater was lacking. And that seems something we ought to be able to fix. Now, at the last town council meeting, we found an error in the loan agreement. The town found an additional $1 million to alleviate that error through reserves. So, and you could say, oh, that means we only have to borrow $9 million. That we really actually, if we want to put an additional $1 million towards this project, we have an additional $1 million to work with. As Councilor Hosafros said, we don't have to build this building at Bayfront. That should free up another $500,000. So that's another $1.5 million.
I didn't say that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll say it. But since that building no longer needs to be built at Bayside, that should free up some additional dollars out of the $10 million to put towards Bay Oaks. My point is we could find some additional funds. Even the town's plan, which is again 2-phased, is I think roughly $7 million. Correct me if I'm wrong, Roger. That doesn't include the second phase of the new gymnasium. As Councilor Aller said, I mean, this in order to generate some revenue, we're going to need to have enough programs in place that generate revenue. And one of those would be the appropriate exercise facilities. Right now, it's free. If there's a way we could put forth a nice set of facilities for our citizenry, then people would gladly pay a certain fee to use those exercise facilities, and that would allow a revenue stream to help with maintenance, et cetera, plus draw more people to the facility. So I guess, long story being longer, is if we could all come together in a joint meeting, hash through this together, everybody just sort of put it behind us, and I think there's still a path towards a very successful solution to Bay Oaks.
I'm sorry, I've got to respond since
Please.
I was mentioned. The Anchorage Advisory Committee, I don't want people stealing their money. They're still looking at a way to provide on-site services, and including buying something on the beach, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think it's fair to even mention stealing from their pot.
Well, first of all, I didn't mean to offend you. I didn't mean to suggest stealing. This is a public meeting. Nobody's stealing
Well,
anything.
stealing,
Yeah. But,
Be
yeah,
allocated.
In the vernacular.
yes.
well, that's fair. Okay, well, I didn't realize that would be husbanded for some other solution down the road. If that's the case, that's fine. I was just mentioning that we have some flexibility here to try to find some additional funds, make sure this could be, at least the first phase, properly funded. So I didn't mean to steal anybody's money, or hope you don't take offense. I just was thinking out loud. So I apologize if we were, certainly wasn't attempting to
Oh, we get it.
take your money. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just to kind of add on to what Jim was saying, cab was unaware that there was a discussion of two phases. I think that was part of the concern. I think once that they found out this could be a two-phase situation or a three-phase situation, I think they opened up a little bit to it. Now the concern with them, and this is my understanding or my reading of their concern, is one, obviously the amphitheater is a big issue, but there's no plan for the second phase. They seem that they're okay with moving forward with what we have and trying to incorporate as much as we can. But as of right now, there's no direction, there's no planning as to the second phase, when it will happen, if it will happen, how it'll get paid for. And I think that's a huge concern for them. If they could speak, I'm sure they would tell you that's part of the issue. Big thing is that they've spent a lot of time on it. They want to be involved in it. They don't want to stall it out. They want some direction from us as to, will there be a phase two? Will it ever happen? Could it ever happen? Or is this going to be, this is what you get and that's the end of it?
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I agree and disagree both, because I looked at the plans that they have now for Bay Oaks, and I think, there's a problem with utilization at Bay Oaks. There's really not enough utilization. And one of the motivations for doing this was to come up with facilities that would create more utilization, able to do things that we couldn't do before. The building having essentially like a senior center and like a youth center, it also interfaces with the field in a way where that could be used for bigger events, concerts, festivals, all kinds of things. I think that is captured in this plan. The other is that with the budget that we have, and I know we're already over budget, this I think is the most elegant proposal to achieve the needs you can within the budget that we're prescribed. The idea of having to throw in things like replacing the old gymnasium because it's going to require maintenance down the road, I think is a little misguided, just because it's a bunch of cinder blocks. If the old gymnasium becomes unuseful, it'll probably be because of some storm event and not just age, because we are on our barrier island. I think that as much as if the community wants the Cadillac plan for Bay Oaks and they want all these different bells and whistles, I'm okay with that. But I think the idea of raising our tax rate so significantly is not only beyond the authority of Bay Oaks, but even us. I would not feel comfortable doing that without some kind of referendum from the people who are paying the taxes that this is how they want to spend their money. I don't want to be the one to tell them this is how they're going to spend their money. So I think that, and I think it's the same thing with a phase. If you say there's a phase, and I understand building the building in a way where it's planned that if there is a phase, we can accommodate it. But to imply that this is just the first step, that this 5.5 million for a facility that doesn't have the greatest utilization is only the first step in a process. It's going to go on, and we're going to be asking for more money in 5 years to do it again. I think that is just kind of kicking the can down the road. That without, and of course, 5 years down the road, I don't know if any of us will still be here. But I think that, let's lay out the plan now. If we are going to request more money, then I would like to see that go with some kind of referendum to the constituency to say, yes, this is where they want to spend their money.
I agree with what Vice Mayor Rexann said earlier about these planning sessions, charrettes, to call them charrettes. You get into a room and everybody has the easel set up. and you say, we're gonna do this project and shoot for the moon, put everything you want down on those easels and that's where we're gonna start. We're gonna start here and get down here somewhere, but we're gonna start here. And, I've sat through many of those, participated in many of them, and they work. What I'm getting with this Bay Oaks and the Bay Oaks committee is to be commended. They've done what they were tasked to do. Went, they looked, they took the input, they came up with a plan, they presented to us, and here we are. And of course, now comes the pull and the tug. So, in my mind, getting back to what you said, Bill, is that the public hasn't really weighed in yet. All this stuff is just kind of out there right now, and we really haven't had the public weigh in. And that's where I would like to get to. I envision, in my mind, we've got a beer budget, a bourbon budget, and a champagne budget. There can be three different plans. If you want the beer budget, this is what it's going to cost. This is how much it's going to cost. It probably won't cost the townspeople very much at all. If you want the bourbon plan, it's going to cost you this much. If you want the champagne version, it's going to cost you that much. I think that has to be sold to the town. And frankly, I love everything they've proposed. I love all these plans, but those, they come at a cost, as we all know. They come at a cost. But what I would like to do in the vein of what Councilman Atterholt said is to have a joint meeting of the board cab and the council in a charrette style in Bay Oaks with the easels, invite all the people down and have a few different proposals to make. Let people get in there and see the models and see this and see that and really get a feel of what's going to happen there and sell it to the people. And, people my age are going to go down there and they're going to look for X. People my dad's age are going to go down and look for something Y. The younger people with growing children are going to look for something else. See, but, they have to see it. They have to be able to see it. Right now, they're just getting bombarded with all this information, what they see in the paper and online and so forth. They really don't have a good feel of it, I don't think. But, that would be my proposal. And if that sounds like it's going backwards, I don't think it is. But then if you had the different proposals and say, now listen, Fort Myers Beach taxpayer, if you want the beer budget, that's what it's going to cost you. If you want the bourbon budget, it's going to cost you that. And if you want the champagne budget, it's going to cost you that. And give them the number. What it's going to cost us on the millage rate and what that equates to additionally on their tax bill every year. The average guy here on the beach or lady on the beach here, if it's a $30 or $40, the average one I'm saying, probably we wouldn't object to. There'll be some people that are just opposed to taxes in general that of course will object to it. But I bet there are a lot of people here on the island that'll say, something, that's a pretty darn good plan. And I'm willing to pay for it. Oh, but I'd like to get them more involved, the townspeople more involved in it and present it, sell it to them. I don't think to this point I think that's our problem. We really haven't given them the options and sold it to them yet. And actually, frankly, told them how much it's going to cost. That would be my idea.
If I could add something?
Yes.
I've heard a lot of talk about 2 phases, and that's never been officially agreed to that there would be other phases. It's an idea that's been thrown out as a compromise position. The thing that I would caution everybody is that we cannot tie the hands of future councils. Future council may not agree to fund phase 2, phase 3, which is a concern of the Bay Oaks Committee, which is why I think you have to go the referendum option if there is enough will to do that. Personally, I think for the size of our town, the plan that we've been presented is very good, and then should people decide, a future council and people decide in the future they want to go forward with more, they could, through lobbying their council, go forward with phase two. But if people want to have a referendum, I wouldn't be opposed to that. But I think a referendum is necessary if you do want to set in stone that there will be a phase two, because we cannot bind the future.
You know, you could just, you could just try to sell the whole project. I mean, yes, sir.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt again for the third time. So I think the issue is a lot smaller than perhaps it's being made out to be. You know, let's remember this. This project started with, we had a donation of a lot as an entranceway into Bay Oaks, and it was only going to be, what do we do with that one lot or whatever. And I think it was a very wise decision to say, well, wait a second, let's not just work on this little section of now the expanded park boundaries, let's look at the whole park. And that's the charrette effort that the mayor was discussing, to try to come up with a long-term plan for the park. So what was the issue? Well, at least in staff's mind, we thought the council had set an initial budget, and we had to do the exercise to see, could we address the immediate needs within that budget? So if we couldn't do that, we needed to tell you that. So we did that exercise, and we determined that we could meet the immediate needs from the professional staff, and what we were hearing were the highest priorities in that initial budget, and we still believe we can do that. So it doesn't prevent a new gym down the road. Here's where the conflict is. Conflict is that if you want a standalone amphitheater, it would need to be physically located where the building shown to you on that plan. As you remember, if you remember the prior plan, that's where it was. So what that means is you would move the building to accommodate phasing. The part of the phasing that's the sticking point is the standalone amphitheater. If you want to have a standalone amphitheater, phase one, phase two, phase 99, whatever it is, you got to plan a spot for it. And if we want to plan a spot for it, that means that the location on that last plan that you saw, the building has to be shifted somewhere else, probably around the pool like it was initially. So, you know, whether there are future phases, whether there's a referendum, all that is really not the sort of the immediate issue that needs to be resolved. Immediate issue that needs to be resolved, if you want to move forward, you know, if you want to step back and re-examine everything, we can do that. The real immediate issue is if you want to, as the Bay Oaks Committee desires, have a standalone amphitheater, then you need to move the building back around the pool, not have that grand entrance that I think most of you can picture in your mind from that meeting, coming in off of Estero and drive. There's a landscape traffic circle in the center that we're in 6, I think that's Oak Street. I would go away and you move back to that first plan where it was kind of wrapped around the building, around the pool. So you would still retain that dirt for the amphitheater. So that moving it around the pool, the room sizes would be the same. The orientation would be different and the layout would be a little bit different, but in terms of Allison's operation, room sizes would be approximately the same. It doesn't really affect us. It's just really, if you want to go forward with the building and say, well, we'll deal with the standalone amphitheater in the future, in one of these future phases, you know, great, we could do that. And we'll move the building back around the pool. If you want to say, I want the amphitheater, within the next 2 years. So then, integrated in part of that building would be the way to go, because that's the only way we could afford it unless the council wants to start trying to find money, additional monies for the project. That's really the decision at hand. So, whenever you're ready to make that decision or those decisions, let us know and we'll proceed. But we're basically in a holding pattern until that happens.
I have a question of Councilman Allers. So what is the benefit that BORCAB is saying for having a standalone amphitheater as opposed to when it's integrated in with the building?
Well, I think that the discussions about having a standalone amphitheater was just for different events, concerts. I don't know if any of you have been to the one that's in Bonita Springs, that's on Old 41.
Many times.
It's a beautiful setup, and I think that concept really resonated with the committee. And I think their fear, and I don't want to speak for them, but I think their fear is that by combining it into this building, it loses that stature, it loses that design or what it was meant to be used for. It just now became part of a grandstand, is what their concern is. We've also talked about potentially ways of raising money. Some of the people on there have been very successful in raising money for the new Welcome Center down at Lover's Key. So far, I haven't heard any plans as to how that money would be raised, just that we can raise money. So I would like, if we have a joint meeting with them, for them to come forward and say, this is how we plan to raise some money. We really believe in this. If we are trying to sell it to the community, that there's a plan from their side of how they think we can raise some money to get to where we need to get. But
Let me stop you right there for a second. You're comparing apples and oranges when you talk about Lover's Key and us up here. That's a volunteer citizen support organization that raises funds to help defray the cost of the park. We're the money. We're the money right here. I mean, we don't have to have car washes and bake-offs and all this other stuff to raise money. We've got the money. I mean, we don't have to go out and soliciting money for these projects. It's very nice that those offers are made, but I mean, that's not the way we do it here. I mean, that's not our role here as the government,
I do, Mr. Mayor, respectfully disagree with that point, because my only point was that they're very good at
I'm not discounting.
offering to raise money.
I'm not discounting,
they
I'm not
have to.
discounting their abilities. I'm not discounting, I know what they've done down there. They've done a fantastic job. I'm not discounting that at all. But anyhow, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
So, the standalone amphitheater, it seems like it's a very hot button with them. I haven't talked to them as to what Roger just proposed about moving the building back around and putting the amphitheater out where it was originally. I do like the idea of having a joint meeting with them and inviting the public in and saying, here's A, B, and C. What do you want to pay for? This is what you have now. This is what you could have. One of the members brought up a very good point that he feels that the community deserves it. They deserve a nice facility that they could be proud of, that people will want to come here, that will actually come over the bridge to use. I don't feel that the way it's designed now, that would achieve that goal. But put it in the hands of the community, see if they're willing to pay for it. See if they say this is what we want, then it makes our decision very easy.
It's interesting because when I looked at the designs, I was looking at exactly the opposite, that the way it's configured now, you could, with the building right there, it seems to me would make logistics and versatility better than just having something open, because you have air-conditioned space. If the weather packs it in, you have space. You could put a stage on the field and use the bleachers as seats, or you could put the stage in the building and then have a festival kind of atmosphere out in the grass. There's a certain versatility with that without the expense and the space of taking something that's just going to be an amphitheater. So I understand what you're saying. I understand trying to model something else, but I do think that the solution, I like the idea as an engineer to get as many functional uses out of something as you can. And I think the design that was put forward by the staff and the designers, I think really achieves that purpose, that there's a lot of opportunity. And I think that a lot of the justification we've been doing with the 5.5 million come from the ability to say that we are going to create more uses, more functional uses of that property. It's not just going to be people playing pickleball. Now we're talking about, as part of the Island Hopper Festival, we can have bigger names come for bigger concerts. We could do a festival, the people are out on the grass. We can do a lot of the things with the way it's configured now that I don't see getting that much additional functionality with an amphitheater. We also know that people come to the island for the beach. It's a hard sell for people to come down here and sit in traffic to go somewhere where they can go to Bonita, say, where they don't have the same kind of traffic constraints. And one other point, a little off topic, but came up with what Councilman Atterholt was saying. At the meeting, our last meeting, there was a pretty good consensus that with taking this 1.5 million out of our loan amount and having to pay for it directly, it doesn't mean that we inflated this project by 1.5 million. There was consensus that it's still a $10 million project. We're just financing less of it.
I'd like to jump in and say that I agree with Bill about the location of the amphitheater. I think it's actually better to have it next to the building. I've produced a lot of shows, community theater, and I see it as a much better location. If you're doing a show with costumes, you need a place for people to change. You need a place to store the costumes. You don't want to be hauling them clear across to the other side of the field. The same way with weather and equipment. If you've got lighting, mics, all kinds of electrical equipment, if the storm is coming, you can get that stuff inside quickly. You're going to have a catered event, a dinner theater. You've got the building right there to keep the food warm or cold, et cetera, et cetera. To me, it just seems like it works much better to have it there. I like the idea of having it attached to the building. That's not to say that there aren't some improvements we could do to the current plans to make them better in some way, nicer in some way, more attractive to people. But I like the idea of having the theater next to the building, the stage next to.
And I think that gets back to the mayor's suggestion. I think it's a good one to have a joint meeting at Bay Oaks where we could literally juxtapose the original vision from Borcab with what the town came up with, have some input, have the design team there where they could answer questions. There's modifications, if there's concerns. I think it also, we as an entire group need to prioritize what's most important, particularly if we do it in phases. So I support the mayor's thought on bringing everybody together at Bay Oaks, having a joint meeting.
I'm going to bring everybody together. I wouldn't do it at Bay Oaks because when we've had meetings there before, the sound quality is horrible. There's an echo, the recordings are bad, you can't hear what people are saying. So I don't know if we want to.
It's not really a meeting per se. It's more of you're milling around, you're talking to people, and the easels are up and there's discussions going. It's more of an interactive. It's not like a sit-down meeting of sorts. That's not what I envisioned. I envisioned people.
And I don't think you and Jim were on the same.
Well, I mean, we can do either one or both or whatever you want to do, but my idea was more of a threat type. I mean, not getting back the original, but taking what we have now and exploring the different possibilities of A, B, or C. And
To me, that feels like moving backwards. I feel like we're not making progress forward.
here we are. I mean,
I could see, I don't think the two concepts are mutually exclusive. I like the idea of having all the charts out where the public can mill about, have the design team, have the town staff there to answer questions. Everyone has a chance to sort of interface with the design team and see all the various proposals. And then maybe we follow that up with a joint meeting here at the town council chambers and kind of hash out how to prioritize, just start making some tough decisions in collaboration with our board cab advisory committee.
that would be fine. And in the process, I mean, while that's going on, hopefully the press will be involved with this and follow it closely and so forth, and be relaying to our taxpayers what this is going to cost. And and also not just the hard numbers, but also promoting the benefits to the community of the stage this way, or an amphitheater that way, or the entranceway this way, and so forth, and try to reach some consensus among the community. You know, I mean, we're like in a cocoon at times here, the town council and board cab, you know, we've got our little group, they've got their little group, but we need to get the whole community involved in it in some fashion, and have them weigh in on utilitarian portions of it, design portions of it, and frankly, the dollars and cents of it. I mean, everything's great until you have to pay for it. But as I said earlier, I mean, if we can come up with a beautiful project, I have every feeling in me that says the good people of the town of Fort Myers Beach will get behind and support a project that may cost them a couple of extra dollars a year on their tax bill. Everybody must remember when they pull out their tax bill and look at the town of Fort Myers Beach's portion of that tax bill, how minute it really is. Again, I know some people are averse to any form of increase in taxes, and I'm not proposing a tax increase today at all. But let them see what is proposed and what it's going to cost. Let them decide. Let us know. Just like they did about the clock.
Mr. Mayor, I think if we're going to compare apples to apples, I would like, if the council would like to direct staff to the proposal that they showed us with everything in one. My conversations with Roger, it was just kind of put together as this is an example of what we could do. I don't think any of us agreed that the design, the way it looked, was exactly what we'd like. I'd like to see if they could take a stab at taking the input that they got from BORCAB and from council and making that plan a little more designed so that if we are going to present it to the public, they can see this is what has been approved so far. This is what you would be getting. This is what you could get.
Exactly.
So that, you know, because right now you're just looking at a white building that really has no personality, has got nothing.
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of what I was trying to say in my long-winded way, but that's exactly what I'm proposing. And put it out there, let them see it, let them touch them, let them feel it, and get an idea, get a feeling for it, and then the sales job starts. You know, Bill, you're an engineer. I'm in my background is development. So you know, you have a vision, build it, but you got to sell it. You got to sell it. And
What is it that you're wanting to sell?
the concepts.
Well, are you wanting the amphitheater?
I'm not getting into the specifics of that. I'm not proposing.
Well, I don't think we need to sell the current idea. We've got the money to do it.
No, we don't.
Well, we're close to having the money to. That's,
There's a,
if we
there's a,
keep moving along this path, I feel like we're making progress.
well, I mean, assuming that we're going to do all three projects, there's a finite number from what I'm getting for the Bay Oaks project, which is in the $5 million range or something along those lines. Now, if we in fact want to take the recommendations of BORCAB and do it a little more grandiose, it's going to cost plenty more than that. And
Then that's what you're wanting to sell, then, is
yes,
what you're saying.
well, yes. I mean, at least propose and then sell. Propose it and then sell it.
I'm in favor of moving forward with what we've got and improving, taking input about improving it. I'm not in favor of.
I concur. I think it's right. It's a solid design right now. I understand there's some value engineering to be done. I do want to get back to the comparison that Councilman Ehlers made to Lover's Key. And if any of you have any social media friends who are with the Friends of Lover's Key, you're getting tons of different communications about the things they're doing. I don't know how much of the money for the center they raised and how much was kicked in, but Friends of Bay Oaks, if they want to get together and raise money to add on to the agreed upon plan, I think that I don't see a problem with that at all. Again, you know, if they think they can raise enough money to get an additional phase, it doesn't have to happen on this. Doesn't have to happen on this timeline.
It was the Friends of Bay Oaks wallet falling out of his pocket.
But I think that, you know, if there's enough people who are passionate enough about it and feel like they have the ability to raise funds to add some bells and whistles to this proposal, I think that would be a good thing.
And I'm not against that. It's just, I don't feel the need to go forward to build a separate amphitheater. I think there's two separate things going on here. Roger tried to narrow it, at least that we get that bit of it settled, and I'd like to get there.
Yeah, I don't, you know, I think there's really, there's really one issue. That issue is, do you want a standalone amphitheater? And if that is the, you know, the consensus of town council with wherever you want to get input from, if you know the answer today, or you want to take time to get more input, that's the pivotal question. So when you resolve that question, then the other pieces will fall in place. Now, whether you fund that in phase 1 or 2 or 3, that's a separate question. But the first thing from the planning standpoint is you want to integrate it into the building, or you want it to be standalone. And that what I believe to be a fairly narrow decision puts you on one of two paths. So whenever you all are ready to make that decision, we'll be able to begin to move forward again, which we're in a holding pattern right now.
Well, hold on one second there. We know where the vice mayor stands. Let's do a little informal polling then and get an idea. Councilman Alves, how do you feel about that?
Well, honest, I'm impartial between having a standalone amphitheater or having it integrated into the building. I see value in both. In order for me to decide which one I'd prefer, I would like to see a better rendering of how it could incorporate better and function more as an amphitheater with the design that's there now. Know what, in my mind, what it would look like or what it could look like by itself, but I can't see what it could be. You know, what was presented to us at first, to me, didn't appear as though it was an amphitheater. It just appeared as a shelter for some concrete. It didn't have any amphitheater feel. So make a decision whether I'd want this or this, I would really like to see what it could potentially look like being integrated into that building, because I could see that the cost savings that we would have versus building it separately. I'm not a huge fan of the building that wraps around the pool. I think that takes away from exactly what we started out with getting a piece of property to make a grand entrance into that place so that it can be utilized, so people that do know it's there. I think we shouldn't get away from that. That's just my opinion. I think the more grandiose we can make it, the more people will see it, the more visible it'll be, the more it'll get used potentially, the more people will want to come. For me to decide whether I'd want a separate amphitheater or that, I would really like to see what design team can come up with to sell me why it should be incorporated into the existing building, save money for something else.
That's a good hedge job. You've got a great career in politics ahead of you. Bill?
You know, like I said, I agree with Vice Mayor Hosafros that I think that there's a lot of synergy that comes with having the building and the amphitheater in the same place. And I think there may maybe some tweaks that need to be done with the design to really make it function with all these different purposes. One being, you know, it should be a very attractive looking grand stage, because now you're behind a building that from the grass would look like, you know, quite a grand stage without a lot of effort. So the short answer is I prefer them integrated as opposed to separate.
Integrations. Bill, Jim,
Yeah.
sorry.
I would really like to see a joint meeting with BORCAB and the council, and I'd like to see the design team there, and I'd like to see both positions articulated. If there could be some agreement reached as to whether you can accommodate the concerns of BORCAB, you can't. I don't think we have enough information at this point to make that decision, and I'd like to have the input of BORCAB and the design team. I want the town manager and the design team to explain to BORCAB why they did what they had to do, or they felt like they had to do, and then receive the input of BORCAB and see if it can be accommodated, and see if we can come together with a solution that everyone could support. Because I think it's going to be very challenging if the town council moves ahead with a proposal that's completely separate and apart from BORCAB's recommendation in terms of maintaining community sport throughout this process. We've got to figure out a way to bring BORCAB as part of this team. Again, they're not going to get everything they want. We're not going to get everything we want. Town's not going to get everything we want. It's all about compromising and coming together. And I think we need to have that meeting and hear everybody out and work towards a common goal if that's possible.
We certainly didn't offer that to the Anchorage Advisory Committee.
All
Well,
right,
I would have been happy to do that.
okay, we've got two integrations and two further studies. So I will tell you that in my own mind, I had already thought that integration was just fine. But just not to exclude anyone and to get a little more input on it, I'll agree that we should take another look at it and have a little more input from the professionals. So there's your consensus.
So do you want us to continue to develop the drawing, or you want to have your meeting? That's the part I'm not sure about.
What do you think? We could do both?
Because
We
I
could do
think
both?
Dan, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I think Councilman Al's point was correct, and that is that the drawing that was provided of the amphitheater attached to the building was very limited. And was really sort of the very last element they worked at as they prepared that drawing. So I don't think that was sort of fully developed. But I don't want to spend money developing it if you want a standalone amphitheater. That's a waste. The other thing is that this is not, with all due respect, Councilman Alves, this is not about how we got there. No, we had to see if we could build a project within the budget and tell you the answer to that question. And that was done. You have, if you're fiscal conservative and want to stay within the budget and what we originally thought we could afford, we had to know that that option was viable. And we did that, and we told the council that, and the consultant told the council that. Now, that being the case, if people want to spend more money to move forward with a grander plan with or without phases, clearly we can move in that direction. But as I said earlier, look, we could put the, I could tell you that we could put the building adjacent to the ball fields, and we could put an amphitheater out in the upper rightmost corner where the right next to the preserve is, and and if we ever did build it that way, you would say, like, who the hell ever thought to put it all the way out there? You can't park there, you can't get the equipment up there, there's no support there, there's no bathroom there, there's something. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to be sure that you fully understood your range of options. Now, and I think you do understand your range of options. Whenever you're ready to make a decision which one of those options you want to pick, just let us know. We'll be glad to build it.
Well said. Well said.
And one kind of point that now we know we're going to have one meeting rest of December. So if we are going to go back now and have a get together and talk about the different plans and different options, how much of a delay are we seriously talking about here? Because meeting probably wouldn't happen until into January sometime. If any changes, we're talking months of delay.
I don't know, conceptually, these conceptual plans don't take too long to put together. I mean, we're not looking for plans with the outlets in them, we're just looking for concepts, right? So I wouldn't think it would take that long.
So, to be fair, I wouldn't want to, if we're going to explore the option of the amphitheater being attached to the building, and we should give the consultant the opportunity to present, something, that really reflects, so everyone can get a very good understanding of what that would ultimately be. I guess if there was a criticism, I felt would be fair is perhaps that part of the Drawing was a little bit rushed through, but that being whatever it is, I think it is important to get this right. I don't necessarily, know that there'll be a whole lot of more clarity, maybe a little bit more for Councilman Alves, maybe some of you in terms of looking at the amphitheater sort of face on what that might look like. You might have a better perspective with more drawings. So we'll get them produced as soon as we can. Once we have them, we'll let you know and get the meetings scheduled as soon as, we can find a date that everyone can make it. If that's between Christmas and New Year's, we'll tell you that.
Fair enough.
My fear is that, as I said at the beginning, is don't want to lose momentum. Previous councils started us down the road to potentially developing Bay Oaks, and I think we're much closer than even they would have thought we are. And I don't want to be counterproductive. We're talking about money, and this is all coming down to money, yet we're going back to the well with designing, and every time you do that, every time you bring them in, that's taking money away from the project that we're trying to finish. At some point, we have to make a decision. It may not be happy for everybody, but we have to make a decision. Either we're going to move forward with it or we're not. Personally, I don't think people that I've spoken with, there's enough support to build the entire thing at one time. It's sad. Would love to see it, but I personally, and the people that I've spoken with, they wouldn't be in support of spending that extra money to build it to the way that VorCab would like to see it built.
Well, everybody has their own little constituencies that they hear from and so forth. That's why I want to put it out there to the whole town and get the press involved in it and really present it to the people that present it to everyone. And I think right now they're just getting bits and pieces of it. They're not getting the whole picture. So hopefully with this next go around, they will.
With COVID, I'm wondering how many people will actually come, Ray?
Well, that's true too. I mean, we could do our best and somehow do it virtually or do whatever. I'm going to leave that up to the professionals. But if we're going to do it, we have to keep it going. And I agree with you, Dan. I don't want it to stall any further than it already has. I mean, we've taken a path, and we're going to march down the path, and we have to keep moving. Anyhow, we'll have to look at that issue with the COVID later on, I guess. All right. Any final comments on the Bay Oaks?
Just maybe to be clear, so I know we've had some discussions with Roger in the past that we haven't been very distinctive exactly what we want to direct them to do. So I think giving the staff the clear direction that we'd like them to go hasn't really been laid out. Maybe I'm missing something.
Well, let me see if I can
completely understand.
summarize.
Could I?
You got
Just
the
a second.
idea.
Sure.
Paul and I are fine with, going with the current plan and modifying it. Dan has some questions, which I want his questions answered. Maybe Dan could meet with the planners and they could explain to him different possibilities, and he might come on board rather than paying
Well,
them to do another whole plan that slows us down.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be a whole nother plan. It's just tweaking a little bit to what they've shown us so that when we do present it to the people, they can see exactly this is kind of what it could look like. And we already can see what the grandiose plan is, what it would look like. But I think if you want to compare apples to apples, you should have something that is a little further along than what we've seen so far.
I was just offering you having a solo meeting as a way of keeping our momentum going,
And,
hopefully.
I'm not opposed to that if the council's, if that's the direction of the council, but I would, just want to be prepared when we go in to give everybody their options. That once the decision's made, and we're not going backwards and starting all over again.
I think anybody has that intention.
Well, I was going to suggest we put a clock on the arches and put those at Bay Oaks.
He'll be here all season, ladies and gentlemen.
So I still don't think we have clear direction to Roger.
I think Roger does. Go ahead, Roger, tell us what you think.
Well,
the
let
direction
me,
is.
let me tell you what I think my takeaway is, and please correct me if I'm wrong. We're gonna just instruct the consultant to develop a little bit more about how the amphitheater attached to the building aspect of the plans, so that you can get, a couple of different view corridors on how that would look. And once we have that, we'll then let you know we have that, or as soon as we know we have a date that we'll have that, so that we could plan a joint meeting, is what I'm hearing. Is that nodding
No,
ahead? Is that?
I'm agreeing with that direction, but, as much information as we can have for that meeting, for everybody to make a decision, the best guess at dollar amounts. This is gonna be what this costs. This is what you get for this cost, and this is what this is gonna cost, and this is what you get for this cost.
Well,
That we're not costing, I don't know, it could be this.
well, do you want us to spend money to figure out totally figure out what a standalone amphitheater
No,
would cost?
No,
mean,
but I think, you can ballpark it, and there's plenty of research
Yeah,
out there to see what one costs.
Remind you, we can do that, but again, it's not a price issue. I mean, it is a price issue because everything, at the end, everything is a price issue. It's a location issue. So if your position was you don't like it around the pool, and I'm not trying to pigeonhole anybody, but I'm saying if that's in your mental contemplation of this issue is, I don't like it, I don't like the building around the pool, which is the first thing we showed you. I do like the grand entrance. Okay. That eliminates, for all intents and purposes, a standalone amphitheater. So you have to be willing to compromise one for the other. If the standalone amphitheater is more important to you, then you have to be willing to live with the building wrapped around the pool and having less of a grander entrance. So that's notwithstanding whatever tweaks we do to the amphitheater attached to the building, or how grandiose the standalone amphitheater is. That's truly pivotal issue. And of course, both of those have financial implications and adjacencies and other things to attach to them. But so if I believe that a better understanding of how the amphitheater would integrate into the building may allay some of the concerns that you have, and perhaps some of the ones that Bork has, maybe not. Maybe there's we want a standalone one, nothing less than a standalone one that will please us. But if that becomes their position, just understand, by virtue of that, that means you have to bend another real place, unless you want to start moving the second field, which we're trying to avoid doing, because that has huge cost implications. You're back to wrapping the building around the pool. So with that said, if you have hesitancy about the amphitheater attached to the building, that could potentially be relieved by us prepare a little bit better drawings of what that would look like. Maybe not,
So, it sounds to me like we'll have a joint meeting with the town council and, maybe not a formal meeting per se, but a meeting with, Board Cab. We'll have a presentation by the, design folks about these, two different options. We'll have some discourse between Board Cab and the council. We'll have a little give and take, talk about it. And everybody will be informed, and then we'll take it back, and maybe at the next meeting, make a decision about which direction we're gonna head. Sound fair? Okay. You envision it too, manager?
Yes, sir. Just two last points, if I may. One is that don't forget, we're talking about the physical structures, whether we're talking about, as we're talking about all three of these projects. And particularly in the case of Bay Oaks, there's furniture fittings and equipment that will need to go inside these buildings that are also part of the budget. Don't want to forget about those things. So again, the more buildings you build, the more of that you have also. So let's not forget about that. Of course, the design fees are part of the budget, so let's not forget about that. So we want to be careful not to have to go backwards any more than necessary, because obviously we don't recover those monies.
Roger, just on that point, if you could, as you would try to address the concerns about the amphitheater, if you could also have the, as much as possible, go into the joint meeting with BORCAB, try to, well, Allison's heard, or your team has heard most of the concerns that BORCAB has raised. Any other concerns that they have addressed or criticisms, you could try to have the design team, where appropriate, try to accommodate those, what you're going to present. It's just the starting point of the conversation. That would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of conversation by them, but I really think the
It was-
sort of the things to be resolved are really, it's not a list of 100 things, it's a list of 3 things.
It was broader than the amphitheater, though, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think the issue is standalone amphitheater and how fast you're gonna build out the rest of their plan, if you're gonna build out the rest of their plan, and how fast you're gonna do that. Those were, in my mind's eye, those were the questions that need to be answered to move forward. So, you know, sort of pertinent comments. They didn't like the facade that the council picked. But that's fine. We could, if they have a picture of a different facade of a different building that they like better, they can give that to us and we can give that to the consultant and to you, and you like that one better, we could switch that. That's not, that's not something that
It's not the deal breaker.
stops the
deal breaker.
progress of the project.
Right.
That's not the deal breaker.
One of the persons says, here, send in a picture, one of the people from BORCAB sent a picture, here's a picture of a standalone amphitheater. Well, that's great, and, if we make the decision to have a standalone amphitheater, we can look at that picture and whatever others they or the council or the community generates for the standalone amphitheater. So, I don't really, I don't really think that it's there's a lot of sort of decisions on the critical path that are out there. But, I guess we'll find that out if there are, but I don't really see a lot of those. But I think the decision is really, having the chess pieces on the board, and once they're there, they're there, and so once we reach that, we could do it. I think the concern really is that, and here's the thing I get, they've been some of these members have been part of this committee for a long, long time. But finally, after perhaps being on this committee for years and years, are sort of almost at the promised land. And, they don't want to get a book for Christmas. They want a really nice toy, they want the real gift that they want. I get that, we'll do as much as we can do to meet the needs of everybody, but at some point, you folks have to tell us, here's what the budget is for Christmas presents, and we'll do the most we can with that amount of money.
That's right. It boils down to that. Okay. Pretty much kicked that all around. Thank you very much. Okay, the final item, as always, is agenda management.
I do have an item, if I could. Roger, you sent out department reports this past month, and I thought the Enforcement Division's report was particularly interesting and insightful. Chad did an analysis of beach renourishment on the south end, and a litany of options were provided, which I appreciate very much. He was very thoughtful. Also provided some numbers about fines for lighting violations, for the turtle violations, or turtle lighting violations. And I was really pleased to see that the fines have gone down demonstrably because of a good education campaign by the town. Some of it was COVID related, but at the same time, I think the enforcement division is to be commended. We hear a lot about enforcement and fines and so forth, and I'm certainly at the forefront of being a critic at times. The numbers and the amount of fines went down demonstrably. I've heard no criticism from the turtle folks as well, so clearly something's working, and so I commend your team for that. I was wondering if my colleagues would be willing at the next M&P meeting to have Chad come forward and sort of present some of the things he's found out about the beach renourishment, not just on the south end. As you all have seen, I'm sure in your emails, that there's been significant erosion as a result of the most recent hurricane by the pier area, affecting many of those businesses adversely. And there's a side item that I think we all got correspondence on that I'd be interested to hear Chad's views on as well, or the town, however Roger wants to handle it. One of the largest rental firms is trying to come up with a system of putting a film on the windows to prevent lighting violations. Whether that meets the terms or the compliance for the town seems to be up in the air. I don't have the answer to it. I don't know, but I think they're just trying to find a solution. Maybe we could kind of couple all that together as an item on the M&P agenda for the next time we meet. I think I think particularly with some of the information Chad has researched would be helpful for us all to know and for the public to know in greater detail.
Sounds good.
Just a comment on that, because, the turtle glass that you're required to put in buildings is non-reflective. And when the sun comes in at an angle like it is now, the glass gets pretty hot. It's very energy efficient. I think one of the problems I understand with the film is it's almost all reflective. And so when it's reflective, it's still creating a light source. So that can be a problem. And I think in the conversations I've had with the same person that you did, is that I don't think they have found a film that is not reflective.
Bill, you could absolutely be right. I think they're just searching for either yes or no, or tell us if it's going to be compliant or not compliant. I don't have the answer. That's way beyond my degree. But I just know that they're seeking guidance. Is all I know. So you could very well be correct. I just don't know.
Just to fill you in on that, I know you may not have seen the most recent correspondence back to that individual. They were told that they need to get FWC's approval, and we will support what FWC says. If FWC supports a particular product, we want to be careful to use the generic thing, film, because Company A's film may not be acceptable, Company B's film might be acceptable. And of course, is installing it correctly. But assuming they could find a film, specific film or films that FWC will accept, assuming they install it according to the manufacturer's instructions correctly. Under that scenario, we would follow the lead of FWC, and that's what that person was told.
Okay, I did not see that. Our email has been out, so I did not see that. Thank you. Yeah. So, but the broader issue, of course, is Chad's briefing on the beach erosion piece. Yeah.
And you said in an M&P meeting, is there any reason why we couldn't have him come in and talk on Monday?
I just think we're going to have I don't know if we have a big agenda on Monday. I've not seen the email yet, but I'm open to that too, Vice Mayor, whatever.
I'd just like to move it along because people are so concerned with the urgency of this, making them wait until January to hear from Chad seems,
Would be delighted to have it on Monday.
if we could.
Well, we'll have Chad here, and hopefully he'll be able to answer most. I can't guarantee he can answer all your questions, but we'll try to
Or
answer most of them.
not just
He's
answer
been
questions,
forewarned
Yeah,
that I'm
but-
going to ask.
but to present the data that he put forth in the report. I think that'd be good for the public to
That,
know.
of course, he can answer.
And also there's ongoing renourishment on the north end, which is great. And how could that be adjusted, or can it be adjusted to help impact some of those businesses by the pier who didn't recently been impacted even more severely because of the erosion. I'd just be curious as to how what the statuses of the renourishment on the north end is, and procedurally, if that could be adjusted to help some of these triage this area that's been impacted.
Okay, well, yeah,
I don't know.
we'll try to gather some information between now and then and be ready for Monday.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
Just a little bit of history. It's very ironic that the erosion on the north end by the pier there happened where it happened. 'Cause that's that was Steve Strauss at the top of the mast when we did the major renourishment project way back when. He was the only one that wouldn't opt into the program, which required giving, signing off a nominal sort of easement for people, for a maintenance sort of thing. He wouldn't sign off. So his hole, everything else got renourished and his remained a hole, which eventually filled in, now is eroded. It's just,
Just if you could take that a step further, so just help us, for those who don't know the history, did the businesses all agree to pay a certain amount for the renourishment? How did it all work? Do you remember?
I don't recall exactly what the funding was, but, if it was nominal. I don't think it was. I think we had some other funding for that, West Coast Inland Navigational or one of the agencies, but, or several. And, I don't remember if, it wasn't a money thing. I mean, he had more money than any of them, and, but, it wasn't money. It was just, he didn't want to give up that. Anyhow, was there anything else for the MMP, for the, agenda?
Go ahead, you're leaning forward, I'll go after.
Roger left the room, so I had a question. Special events, it says it went to the LPA in December 2020. I wondered, is it going to be on our agenda Monday?
Yes.
It is, okay. And I guess the other thing I'd like to say is one of the parts of our last discussion about Bay Oaks is not letting it slide. Can we here, while we're discussing agenda management, say, okay, we're picking, this is the day we're going to vote on whether we're doing a standalone. We say pick the second town council meeting in January or the first town council meeting in February. Say, this is the day, we're putting it on the agenda. That's the day we're going to vote. Because I don't want it to just keep getting pushed out every meeting. So that would be my request, that we place it on the agenda with a specific date that we vote.
I'm not averse to that at all. Matter of how soon the rest of them come together with these, which sound like they would come together pretty quickly, so. Anybody else have a problem with that?
As long as it's after the joint meeting with Board Cap,
Yes,
I'm okay with that.
it would have to be, yeah.
That would kind of mean that we're laying it out that we want the joint meeting with Board Cabin to be the first meeting in January and then vote on it the second meeting in January.
Or we could even put another month or so just to get a little more feedback, you know.
We're starting to really, then we're,
I'm not pushing it down, Vice Mayor, I'm just,
but that
it doesn't
essentially,
have to be, you know.
well, you know, deadlines are that if they're not set down, then they
Oh, I
tend to
mean,
float
so-
around.
I can tell you, Cab has pretty much drawn a line in the sand that they want it all. That's my impression of what I'm hearing. So be forewarned, I think when we get in that meeting, although there may be some people that are willing to fluctuate a little bit, my impression is that they want it all, or give us a reason of when, or time frame of when it all would be completed. Just my take on it, so to think about.
Okay, anybody else have anything for the agenda management?
Well, I made a request that we pick a date to vote on it. I'd like to at least put it on agenda management and say, this is the day, this is the meeting. We're going to vote on whether it's a standalone or not a standalone. Just like to pick a date.
Are we also going to have a joint Board Cab meeting date that we're going to pick so we can put those in?
Sure, put that on there too. I'd like to get it on agenda management so that we don't keep pushing this down the road.
All right, well, let's do it one at a time then. First, the joint meeting with Board Cab. When do you think we can have that, Manager?
We really consult and see when they be ready in 2 weeks, or they could be ready in 3 weeks. I don't know. I have to ask them that.
Well, I'm thinking they could be ready by the first meeting in January. That's,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
okay,
I
so
have
we
to
could
say
make
that.
the joint meeting with BORCAB, the first regular town council meeting in January, and then say, we're going to vote finally at the second regular town council meeting in January, up or down on whether this is a standalone or not.
You say you wanted to have the joint meeting with BORCAB on the first meeting in January?
Sure. Said that the
That would be a
Consultant could-
separate, that would be a separate meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying the same day as.
same day, sure. Have it
Same
at
day.
9 o'clock and then
Same
have our
day.
regular council
Okay,
meeting start
I
at
got
10
you.
or 11 or
I
whatever.
got you. I got you. Okay. Fine with that?
The only question I have is, that scenario seems to me that the question that we talk about having is A or B or C. What you're saying, it's standalone amphitheater or not standalone, and there's no discussion that I've heard about willingness of the community to pay for it all. So are you suggesting that we have a meeting to discuss those two options and not the entire project, as was the mayor maybe put out earlier? Or I guess I'm not tracking, I'm not following. It seems to me that the discussion or the referendum or anything discussing about doing the entire project is now not being thought of.
That would occur as a result of saying it's going to be a standalone. That's outside of the budget. That could include even more things that BORCAB is wanting, everything. So if the vote goes that way, then we would have to have further discussions on, are we having a referendum? Are we going to do fundraising?
Okay, understood.
But I think we've got a core question that I'd like to see a date set in stone. We vote on it, so that we can keep moving forward with those other things.
Just a procedural question for us new people. If referendum is agreed upon, how would that work and when would that come up? How does it procedurally work for the town? Would it be at the next election?
I think there's more than one way it could work. We could vote to put it on. I think that it's possible pursuant to our charter that the public can bring forth a referendum. There's a percentage of petitions they would have to gather and they could do it on their own should they choose. So that's two different timelines.
That's fine, but my question is, would that be on at the next town council elections? Would it be that next cycle? Was that when it would appear on the ballot?
It would be on the typical way would be for it to be on the next regularly scheduled election conducted in Lee County. That would be the typical way. However, I've seen other communities, they've paid the supervisor election to do a mail ballot or a limited population on a limited issue. I don't know if this supervisor of elections is comfortable doing that or not. I've seen that done in other places.
Just was curious.
But the fallback one would be on the next regularly scheduled election for that is. And you could say, well, I don't like that because that's a primary date. I want it on a general date. And we then would have that discussion about moving it further back, but
That also obviously means
I got a feeling we're gonna get an answer before. We'll be able to get a pretty good feeling.
I'm not saying
once-
we won't,
yeah.
Mr. Mayor. I'm just saying, but if we did the referendum route, it would delay things for a
It
year and a
sure
half.
would.
Is that right? I'm just
It sure would.
procedurally asking these questions so people understand what we're dealing with.
when you say delay things, I want to be clear with my understanding of what that means. If you made the decision to, after through this process to go forward with a standalone amphitheater, and then wanted to expand that discussion to, well, let's just bite the bullet and do everything else other than this initial building. What that would impact is the time delay for the vote to support the amphitheater and everything else. But this initial building would still get built now, or as soon as that's decided upon.
I'm asking this because as Councilor Eller said, the board.
Unless you want to hold that decision to wait the result of that election. So, I mean, you could do all of that too, but
Well, the challenge, of course, is Councilor Allers just stated that at the last board cab meeting, it was two board cab meetings ago, they passed a resolution that they want the entire vision passed as is. If that was to be placed on a referendum, and would take a year and a half before we'd have any sort of direction. These are procedural questions. I'm not
Yes.
editorializing one way or the other. I just want folks to know what we're wrestling with here. Is that fair then? It would be a year
Yeah,
and a half?
I mean, I really don't know the federal election schedule, but that's very possible.
And I
That
think there,
timeframe.
Just a question.
a lot of it comes down to
Election
this.
schedule, actually, not federal.
The decision point I see it is, we go ahead with the plan kind of as it's laid out on the staff proposal, or are we changing it? Now, if we're going ahead with it, you can still have a referendum later, because the town's plan has the capability to expand that. So that the building can be added onto at a later date, that could be part of the referendum without slowing down this process.
But here's where I think the challenge is, Counselor Veach. I understand it. The board cab original proposal has the building in a completely different structure and location. So you couldn't build the town's plan and then have a referendum on board cab's vision in a year and a half, because they conflict with each other. In other words, board cab wants a referendum on their plan as proposed, and do the town's plan and then fill in the blanks later, because they conflict in terms of locations.
Okay, and I understand what you're saying.
Yep.
What I would disagree is, I don't see this referendum as you have to choose between board cab or the town council. I see the referendum is, do you go with the additional phasing of these programs and go over the budget that we have aligned?
Want to pay for it, right?
And that's fair. I'm just saying that what Cab said at their recent meeting was they see their vision as the vision, and if we were to have a referendum, that would be the referendum, and to fund it accordingly. I'm not saying that's your position. I'm just saying that's what they posited. Correct me if I'm wrong, Counselor Allers.
You're correct.
So we all know what we're,
And I'm saying that if we make the decision on council to go with the plan as it is, we can still have a referendum to expand that plan. Not exactly the vision, because there's some incompatibility issues. And I have gone, I understand the plan. I kind of, initially, I've talked to Roger about this, that the idea of putting the building around the pool made sense to me from a personnel standpoint, because instead of two buildings need to be staffed, you combine them into one. But the other side of it is that pools where there's kids and other people doing stuff is not really conducive to public viewing. It's more of a private enterprise, and having a public building there with lots of people who look down the pool,
I know it is when I'm at the pool.
maybe is not preferable.
and
to
I'm
a lot
not
of people, I
debating the
guess.
merits either way. I'm just procedurally just trying to lay out various directions that people have various expectations of headed. So that I'm not advocating one way or the other. I just know that board cab is interested in their vision as presented, and that if a referendum was to be put in place to fund it, it would take a year and a half for that to come to fruition in its purest form.
Yeah,
But I appreciate what you're saying. Yep.
I'm agreeing, but I'm saying that the vote is not Bork's version versus ours. It's the bigger version with the expansion of the current plan that town has proposed.
Yeah, there's, again.
Sorry, I brought this up. I brought it up just as an agenda management issue
It's
to
important,
put,
but
to
these are,
put the dates on.
but the dates have, this conversation is germane to your point, Vice Mayor. This is not, these dates aren't in a vacuum. I'm not arguing. I'm just making sure we're discuss the full ramifications of this process. That's all I'm saying.
But also, I want to be careful we don't overblow what this is. So you either have a joint building with the amphitheater, or you have a passive recreation building, a separate amphitheater, and eventually you build the gym at some point, no matter which one of those two options you pick. So I know at times it can sound like a lot, but it's really, if you really boil it down to what is sort of the critical path or the actual individual decisions you have to make, those are them. Then, of course, it's just timing.
A certain pot of money has already been
Oh,
laid
timing.
out, so we're gonna spend that money now.
I mean, theoretically, you could put the whole thing on hold till every single possible decision as pertains to this is worked out, but, I wouldn't necessarily advise you to do that.
So I made a proposal about 2 dates. Do we have a consensus for those 2 dates? Or Jim, do your questions lead you to oppose that?
Well, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but we really don't know what the meeting on January 11th, the joint meeting will result in. As the mayor pointed out, I think correctly, that we need a little time for the public to digest whatever comes out on the 11th, because again, if we finalize that within a week, I just think, I really wouldn't know until we see how the results of the meeting on January 11th. I'm not going to be difficult. I just think that would give us only a week then to make that determination. And if that's the will of the council, I'll certainly support it, but I just can't give you the definitive answer as to whether that makes sense or not. I'm open to it. I really don't know until we have the meeting on the 11th. I really,
About this, Vice Mayor. About if we have the meeting in January, then schedule the other meeting, the first meeting in February. And if you're laughing,
Well, I'm laughing because we just keep taking this further and further out.
no, Vice Mayor, we've been
I feel
kicking
like
this around for years. One more month isn't gonna break the whole
we're already a
project
month
here.
behind because of Christmas. I just feel like we need to man up here. I'm looking at my fellow council members, okay? Let's look at the data, make a decision. People wanted to get more input. Yes, I agree. Let's get more input. We'll have a joint meeting and then let's make a decision.
well, I appreciate that. And I'm reminded of
Hey.
I'm reminded of the movie Cool Hand Luke. What we have here is a failure to communicate. And that's sort of why we're in the predicament that we're in. It's not out of a unwillingness to make a tough decision. We've had a few communication breakdowns that have caused a bit of distrust in the process. And so trying to repair that and then move forward in a positive way. So, and bring people along with us. If it's the will of the council, I'm happy to vote on the 19th. I'll vote on the 11th. I mean, but I'm trying to do this in a way that makes people feel like they're part of the process instead of having it pushed upon them. So it's just, we got a little bit of a delicate situation here. I'm trying to be sensitive to it, but if you want to move forward right away, that's fine too.
I don't feel like more than a month from now is right away.
I just want to say, we're really talking about what are we going to be voting on? And I think that meeting with WarCab on the 11th to hear them out, and then we make a decision on, we have two clear roads, either going with the plans as they are, or we're going with something completely different. If we go in a different way, then we are stepping back. And we're going to need a lot more money to do it. That's a decision that we make on the 11th.
Well, yes and no, not to further complicate the thing. You could build the building around the pool without the amphitheater and deal with the amphitheater and the gym whenever you're so inclined to do that.
You're kind of making a decision point there.
Your
whether you're
decision
gonna-
point
you're gonna
is,
escalate this project or whether you're going to keep within the budget or within reasonably.
well,
within the
no,
budget.
because whether you build the amphitheater or the gym may be, a 1 year, 2 year, 20-year decision. I don't know what it'll be. Depends on the council and the community, what they want. But that, again, we have to be careful. We don't make it bigger than it is. So let's be sure we really understand what we're deciding here. So you either build a building with an amphitheater, build a building without an amphitheater, and then you figure out how you can deal with the amphitheater and eventually the gym. Those are the decision points.
So where are we with the Vice Mayor's request about the meeting times?
I'm okay with the meeting on the 11th to WarCab about the second date. The meeting after that or the meeting after, I'm open to either one, but I think the important part is meeting with them, hearing them out, they're hearing us out, and making a decision and moving forward.
I'm fine with that too.
Right.
Yeah, okay, Jim. All right. Any other items on the agenda management?
Got a couple things that should be not nearly as complicated. Okay, one thing is and I don't know if that has to be on the agenda or not, because it's a fairly small thing, but the Kiwanis Club is in the midst of going through and redoing their benches. on the beach. Now, the Kiwanis Club is a very important active civic organization here. But I have heard numerous complaints, and honestly, I'm one of them, about the pure advertising nature of the Kiwanis benches on the beach. It's only advertising on the beach, and they're nothing but advertising. And in my example, there's a bench in front of my house that is roughly the same color as my house, advertising the thrift shop, and we regularly get people coming into our yard thinking we are the thrift shop because it's that much of an advertising.
Wonder you can afford all the things that you.
Got no furniture left in the house, but there's money in the bank. So I would like to get some direction from council about what we tell Kiwanis we want on the back of those benches. Are we okay with this advertising? Do we want it toned down? We can put some other kind of positive, we can do anything else with the back of those benches. We can put some kind of positive message for any number of reasons. But just to tone down the advertising so they're just not billboards on the back of the benches.
You just, if you know it, could you give us a little more history behind the benches?
The benches have been put out by the Kiwanis Club for some time, and they're used. I see quite a bit of people on them. Some places there, and I don't know how many there are, maybe half a dozen down the beach.
About that.
Yeah, and then there's more other places that currently, there's one with the post office they're working on doing, and et cetera, et cetera. And they put them there as a service, but also as an advertisement. And putting advertisement on benches is a pretty common thing. It's actually fairly lucrative business. That's what they do, and they use it as a way to draw business to their thrift shop, which generates money that has done a lot of wonderful things on the island. They give a lot of scholarships, particularly, and I know people who have lived here for a long time who talk very highly of their programs, the way they support the town. I would just like to see it done in a way which is not such a blatant bit of advertising. I've talked to the Kiwanis Club. They seem to be open to the discussion. I just want to, if there's any kind of consent from council to try to encourage them to tone down the advertising of the benches.
You say tone down. I mean, less advertising or different kind of advertising, or?
Maybe there's a message on the board, on the back of the bench that is not advertising, and then a smaller thing saying provided by the Kiwanis Club.
They're selling the advertising to advertisers. That's how they make their revenue.
They are advertising their own business.
That's just the Kiwanis, just to put the Kiwanis. Okay. Well, yeah, then I think there's probably a little room to talk to them about that. We're talking about 6 benches and.
I think the other concern we would have if we're going to open up a dialogue with them is that when the bench is in disrepair, we need timely repairs.
The question is, does this rise to the level of agenda management? Do we need to put it on an MMP? Can we just say Roger and Bill are going to work on
It
this?
sounds good enough to me. The manager and staff look into it. And if you find any difficulty with them and you feel that we have to take a look at it, then throw it back to us then. But it doesn't sound to me like,
Okay, well,
Yeah, big deal.
what I would like to be able to do is work with Council Veach to have him outline his preferred course of issues with them, and then that way I could advance it to them and see what the reaction is, and if there's pushback, I'll let you know.
I'm in agreement with that.
I'm gonna agree with that too, and it's not just the content, but also toning down the colors and, in other words, having the benches blend in more.
And then more, or, there's, if there's something useful we can say, if we just maybe beautify them. Or if there's
That's fine.
some message we can put on it.
move that one further down the boulevard a little bit. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, another thing is, I was in some conversations about the Bayfront Park Veterans Tribute. That, if you remember at our last meeting, there was consensus, what is proposed was not particularly inspiring and took away some trees. What I had a conversation with Forrest Critcher, who is kind of one of the point men to try to come up with this tribute, and came up with a couple of ideas that were sent to me by constituents, which I think had a lot of impact on me. One was that you put something with shadows in a way that on Veterans Day, on the 11th day of the 11th month, that the light shines onto some kind of emblem, so it makes it an event that only happens on Veterans Day. But the idea that I also proposed to him is that he has told me numerous times that there are a lot of people who want to do this, who will raise the money to do it, is that instead of having our designers include a tribute, that we allocate space in Bayfront Park and then allow the veteran community to come up with a tribute put in that per our approval.
Welcome to give any input anytime, I think, would you?
A matter of going future with the Bayfront Park design. Do we want the designers to be working on this? Or do we want to take this outside of the review?
Well, hopefully they could do it together. You raise a broader point too, Counselor V, in terms of Front Park. We're starting to get a movement, a second track of ideas for Bayfront Park, and part of this, you raise a good question, but also as we talk about joint meetings, it might be helpful at some point to have a joint meeting with all the neighbors and community around Bayfront Park to see if we can get back onto one track of a vision for Bayfront Park. I've seen a lot of different suggestions. Mentioned the veterans piece. I've gotten a lot of people sending me really interesting designs for lighting at night to brighten up that area in a way that's interesting. And there's a number of other thoughts out there. It seems like in conjunction with what you're talking about, just have a meeting with the town's folks who are interested, particularly those folks who live in that area, the veterans community, and kind of hash all this out so we can seems like we now have a dual track now on Bayfront Park, and it'd be great to get back to a single track where everybody's working together. But I think, but I'm open to working with Forrest and other veterans and welcoming their input.
Is that something you need to put in on the agenda, or is that something that, it's a matter of whether we want the designers to be working on this independently or not? Tribute.
I think we should come together jointly. I mean, they're welcome to give input just like anybody else, don't you think?
We have to coordinate somehow
So
together.
I think we have to at least facilitate.
Certainly welcome. Blank slate still, as I understand it.
Oh, no, not quite blank. We have,
The veterans piece, I mean,
well,
the content.
what I'm hearing is we had a design that I thought was, everything was pretty much settled, other than the location of the Veterans Tribute. What I'm hearing Council Veach say is that it sounds like there's a lead person in a group that's willing to sort of take on the Veterans Tribute aspect of the project, which would allow us to say, here's a dirt for the Veterans Tribute, we're gonna build everything else and get that going. That's what I thought I heard him say. Now, or have our designer continue to develop concepts and ideas for the Veterans Tribute that would be part of our project that we would build. That's, as far as I know, that's only sticking point of the Bayfront Park project moving forward, unless there's something new that the council wants to introduce.
I think we should retain control. I'm open to veterans' input. I think ultimately, staff and we have,
Or, of course, we control, it's our property, but the question is that
I mean, I don't want,
do we go forward with the design without the Veterans Tribute and just reserve some space for it and work with them to develop that subsequently?
Guess the question
Irrespective of who's
here
paying
is,
for it, or do we just go ahead and say, have our designer bring in a couple more concepts for Veterans Tribute, have you pick one, we go forward and build it?
this is the agenda management section. We're just to decide whether we're putting something on the agenda or not fleshing everything out. So I guess our prior practice had been somebody would bring up an issue. If two other people said, yes, let's put that on an MMP, or yes, let's put that on town council. That's kind of how my view of agenda management works. So
put it on the agenda, Bill?
Yes.
There you go. Okay, anything else?
Consensus besides me.
I don't think it needs to go on the agenda. I think like Ray, I think we should retain control and discuss it with them as it comes up and it's presented to us. Will be on the agenda as part of the Bayfront Park project.
I'm comfortable putting it on the agenda because I think we still have additional input that's coming in, and this is a way to welcome and honor it.
With that, Bill?
Well, I agree. I think we should put it on the agenda. I think we should have more of a discussion on it because it's a more or less separate entity. And give it its own legs. That's like two of us, and if that's enough.
We're not done. Ben, would you like to see that on the agenda?
Yeah, I'm okay. I mean, if
Mr.
we're building something to honor people that were involved in it, I don't see why having their input as to what it should look like is harmful. If they're willing to pay for a section that we provide for them, and they come back to us and say, this is what we'd like to see, and we approve it or don't approve it, it seems pretty simple to me. I don't know why we would want to discuss it.
I'm not saying not to discuss it. I'm saying we discuss it when it comes forward naturally. That's all my point was.
Anybody else?
Well, one more thing.
Come on, Bill. Go ahead.
We have voted previously to allocate money to apply for renourishment of the eroded part of the beach in the north part of the island. There is also a critically eroded section in the south part of the island around the condos down there, and there's, as you all know, we're getting a lot of emails wanting some attention. So is this something that should go on the agenda? Should we decide to include that part of the beach in our request for renourishment from the TDC?
That's why I asked for Chad to be at Monday's meeting. It's kind of already, we need to get more information from Chad before we go there.
I think we're gonna need some legal answers too, as far as responsibilities, ownership of beach and so forth and so on. Whether it's private property, public property,
When I mentioned that, Bill, that I did hope to include that issue in Chad's with us, and
I'm kind of bringing it up here because I mean, we're already in this process, right? I mean, these cycles happen and they happen fairly infrequently. So I don't want us to put this off for a matter of convenience and then find out that we've missed the window of opportunity.
would yield to the vice mayor on timelines for the next.
Not
tranche.
missing, we're not missing the opportunity.
Okay, then certainly I'll withhold that. That's,
But I hope that's discussed on Monday. I hope what you just raised, absolutely.
I'm concerned about it as well, which is why I wanted Chad to be here. Could all get educated about the process.
right. Mr. Mayor?
anyone else? Hearing nothing? Anything else for the good of the order? For lunch?
Move to adjourn.
Okay. The meeting is adjourned at 11:38. Thank you very much.